Welcome to Leadership Reimagined, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, CEO and founder of Ellig Group, executive search advisors, pioneers in redefining executive search through our unwavering commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today on Leadership Reimagined, our topic is AI, a career co-pilot for the future of work. And I'm delighted to welcome Hamoon Ekhtiari, the founder and CEO of FutureFit, an AI-powered GPS for your career. Previously, he was the Director of Strategy and Innovation as Executive Vice President at a $30 billion telecom and technology company, where he led the future of work strategy for the enterprise. Prior to that, Hamoon was the founding director of a leadership, skills, and innovation academy at one of the world's largest urban innovation hubs. He has also founded a social enterprise that helped build Deloitte's consulting business in the Caribbean and taught as an adjunct faculty member. Hamoon is a member of the Governor General's Canadian Leadership Conference, an ADR Fellow at the University of Cambridge, a recipient of University of Waterloo's Alumni Achievement Medal, and a Canada Millennial Scholar. Hamoon, welcome. I am so delighted you could join us today.
Thank you, Janice. It is a pleasure to be here.
Well, as an entrepreneur and an immigrant, you stated that you spent a lot of your life thinking about journeys, transitions, and pathways, both in a personal and professional sense. How did this lead to the founding of FutureFit and fueled your success?
Janice, when I think about my journey over the years, a couple of decades ago, I was an immigrant kid who moved to this side of the world without knowing English. My parents made the decision so that my brother and I could have a better opportunity in life and work and achieving the goals we ultimately had. And at that moment in time, I, as a kid who didn't know English, within 2 weeks of school, 9/11 happened, the world turned upside down. I had to figure out my path. I had to figure out what path to opportunity and life and success was going to look like for me. My parents, mid-career, had to reset from zero and find their path to work and opportunity and having their skills and capabilities recognized. And then as I spent my years over the last 2 decades going from fields that wouldn't have been expected to another, going from being someone who was in tax and audit to becoming a human capital consultant, going from someone who was in management consulting to suddenly working on social innovation and social change, going from a small startup to a large $30 billion enterprise. All of those were points of transition and inflection points that I saw replicate, not just for me and my family, but for many around us. When you think about students coming out of school, when you think about immigrants making a transition, when you think about veterans returning to the workforce, when you think about parents coming back to work, there's so many points of transition in our journey of work. And that's what's driven my work so far.
So as an entrepreneur, and I know we have many of them listening to us today, what have been some of those obstacles that you faced and how did you overcome them in terms of building FutureFit?
For me, I would say there were a couple that come to mind. One is ultimately the question of you have an idea and everyone has an opinion about your idea. So as an entrepreneur, how do you balance listening to feedback and people's insights and at the same time being clear about the path you're pursuing? How much conviction is too much conviction around an idea, and how do you test and iterate the idea fast enough? And then I think the other piece was very much the personal struggle, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, you start to ask questions of, is this real? Can I do it? Can I make it happen? And so how do you, as you every day are trying to build a company and deal with the external pressures, deal with what's also internally driving you as well?
So with technology moving so fast, we're about to have 1 year anniversary of ChatGPT. How have you been able to progress with FutureFit in terms of meeting clients' needs, and how has that evolved from your mission originally to where it is today?
Our mission, Janice, day one when we began was all about this premise of a GPS for your career. And that mission, we spent a couple of years working on it, building solutions around. And then over the last year, as generative AI came out, a fundamentally new world was opened up. So when you think about both the individual needing guidance and understanding of their pathway, but also then the employer wanting to be able to support their people at scale as the world of work changes, we now have a world where it's possible to provide everybody with that personalized, human-like career guidance in the form of what we think of as a career co-pilot. So for us, the North Star remained the same, the technology opened up a fundamentally new way of delivering that.
So I've heard you say that this may be a benefit that every employer needs to provide to their employees, to have that GPS. What does it look like in terms of what would an employer do to say, okay, my employees are going to have this GPS and this is what it's going to do for them?
Yeah. And so if you think about the challenges an employer face, one, they want to be able to attract the kind of talent they need to deliver on their business strategy and goals over time. To do that, they need to set themselves apart in the market. So there's an employer brand question of why should I come work for you? How do you benefit my career in a way that others might not?
And that's becoming more and more important to today's employees
Exactly.
and candidates. We find it's a candidate market. They can go anywhere they want.
Absolutely. So that's one. Then the second challenge you think about from an employer perspective is to say, at every moment in time, do I have the right skills here to actually deliver against that strategy? Because otherwise, it's just a PowerPoint. It doesn't get realized. And so that skill gap, shortage, skill requirements requires you to be able to very quickly help people adapt to what's next. And then the third piece of it is when you think about goals of employee satisfaction, retention, and engagement, that comes from investment in your people. And so you combine brand with a need for skills, with a need for an engaged workforce to deliver against a strategy. The way a career co-pilot comes to life is to say, we're investing in you and your ultimate success by giving you this guide that's always available to you. You can ask it any questions you have about career progress and career pathways. It can connect you to training programs that you might need to build skills that are important for the future. And it helps you with your job search process.
However, there are a lot of employees out there who are fearful of their jobs being eliminated by AI. So how do you allay that fear? Is it through having this GPS, or will a lot of those employees lose their jobs going forward?
And it's one of the biggest questions around AI and workforce today. As we look at the data, Janice, there are a couple of elements there. One is you are right that there's going to be some level of fear from an employee perspective. So how do you help channel and rechannel that? By using AI to actually help them be more successful, it makes them more comfortable interacting with these tools because they see the power and the benefit it can
And they're
have.
empowered.
Exactly. And the second is also supporting them to use AI in their work more effectively in a more supported way. And then finally, I think on your question of how will the equation on jobs change, there is absolutely an increasing number of jobs that are going to be changed or fully disrupted as a result of technology and AI. And so I think the version I've seen of the best leaders is they don't shy away from that reality. They're honest that the world around is changing and their employees can see that. They're smart people who see how the world is changing themselves. So when they see honest leaders talking about an evolving future of work and then come and say, and we're going to invest in your success so that no matter where that world ends up and whether it's here or elsewhere, you can be successful, that changes that relationship.
So can AI really replace humans? You talked about having hands, mind, and heart, and what's needed and what AI can do and what humans can do. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and maybe to start with your question of can it replace humans? I think there's a long spectrum of it augmenting, supporting, enabling humans in the work they're doing. And there are tasks and parts of jobs that it can, is, and will take over. When you think about, we talked about this idea of three types of skills generally: head skills, heart skills, and hand skills. And when I think about AI and its trajectory, it began with more predictable hand skills, right? It could move one item from here to there. Then it moved towards head skills and it can do cognitive decision-making tasks that we didn't think previously possible. And now when you think about generative AI, large language models, the combination of voice, text, conversation, and its ability to infer and make judgments in real time, it can increasingly have human-like interactions. And so what that means is there are very few jobs that I would consider untouchable, but there's absolutely a spectrum of jobs in terms of more susceptible versus less susceptible. And that equation itself keeps changing over.
So, what are employers doing to meet the needs of their customers and retraining their employees. You mentioned a couple of your clients
Yeah.
that you're working with. Talk to us about that. What are your clients asking for, and what are you delivering on?
Yeah, and as we do this work on the employer side and the business side, the big topics top of mind. One is around how do I source talent in ways I haven't thought about before. And so rather than just posting a job, I'm praying for the candidates to show up with the new skills required. How do I tap new and alternative pools of talent? Right? There are tens of millions of people in this country that have skills or the ability to gain the skills necessary for jobs that a lot of employers have, but just don't have the visibility or access to opportunities. So we see employers like a major healthcare employer say, we're going to fund a pathway that has a guaranteed job at the end and will support the individual, often from more diverse backgrounds, to go through pre-funded training, be connected to an assessment of their skills, and then triaged and routed to the pathway that's most suited to both their interest and what's in demand in the market. And at the back end, the employer is ready to say, if you complete this pathway, we'll give you a guaranteed interview or a job offer or a work opportunity for you to actually get experience. And so they are building in ways they would have never done from a recruitment and talent acquisition perspective. Think of it just like a highway infrastructure. They're building on ramps where predictably you get into jobs rather than I'm just going to go to higher education, cross my fingers that I'll end up with a job. These are employer defined pathways. And we've now had thousands of people start to progress through these pathways with employers on the other side. That's one example. And another is internally thinking about giving employees, and particularly when you think about frontline workers and those that are at scale, most of the workforce in the economy, they are not ones that are going to sit down for hours at a time inside of Workday to figure out the exact right learning training program for them. That, they're at your store delivering the services you need. They're at the branch interacting with customers. And so employers are increasingly thinking about how do I put in their hand a really accessible career guidance tool that helps them navigate their decision making on what's next for them and the skills they need to gain.
So that's the career co-pilot
That's
that
right.
you've developed. And what do you see like 3 years out in terms of how will companies look in terms of being able to access that talent, reskill that talent, and meet the needs of their customers? Is this something that's going to be really a difficult task for every employer to do, or will one see another do it and this will be catching on? I mean, because a lot of us are still not very informed and have an ease with AI, right?
Absolutely. And part of the way I think about AI is AI should not be front and center. It should be enabling whatever you want to accomplish. And so when you think about accessing talent pools, to give you an example, we've developed a network of 500 plus alternative talent providers across the US. These are not formal higher education institutions, but they are nonprofits, workforce centers that have talent pools available for employers to tap. What AI does behind the scenes is takes requirements from an employer described in natural language and then searches that network of talent providers to say which mix of these organizations can best help you achieve the numbers you need in the locations you need of the talent and skills you're looking for. That's AI at work, but it's solving the problem that's needed. So I think it's about making it easy and comfortable for the employer to interact with. And then I think on the other side, I would say employers, what we see is when they face the most significant shortages from a skill perspective, that's when they make the most significant investment.
I'm going to ask a question that is about immigration. Do you think that we could have a very orderly way of having immigration into this country if we had that type of what jobs need to be filled? And where are we lacking? Because our birth rate is down, or, the number of people going into the market versus the employees who are retiring is becoming scarce, right? So we are not going to have the skills that we need for the future. So I'm looking at our immigration situation. We know there are people that have skills. What can we do there?
And I'm really glad you bring this up, Janice, because this is where stepping back and looking globally really makes a difference, right? We talk a lot about predictions about the future. The one thing you don't have to predict is demographics, right? Those numbers are baked in already. We know exactly what's going to happen with demographics. And when you look globally, when you look north of the border to Canada, when you look at some countries in Europe, you can have a very economically focused immigration policy, that identify specific sectors of the economy that have the most need for workforce and directly drive very targeted and orderly immigration processes that bring people with skills to actually fill those needs in the economy. And this is not a zero-sum game. This is not a Janice takes Hamoon's job, Hamoon takes Janice's job. There are significant segments of the economy where we are continuing to face shortages day in, day out of talent and skills. There are people we have in the country who are being overlooked and we can tap. And we can build a much more robust model of economic immigration that benefits our economy and our employers and also builds predictable pathways to opportunity to those who are looking for being a part of the dream we're building here.
Okay. Hamoon Ekhtiari, CEO of FutureFit. Are you talking to Congress? Are you talking in the government? Are you educating them on maybe some of the solutions here?
Janice, we do spend part of our time in DC and other policy centers. We're backed by JP Morgan and also work with their policy center around some of these questions of talent and skills and workforce. So we do our best to contribute there. We also are clear that we're focused on learning about how this technology can best work, bringing it to life, and then using the insights from the ground to inform really meaningful, practical policy implications. And so things like we worked with a state government to build a flexible training funding model that rather than saying we will only fund your seat of getting a training program, had a component that was whatever you need to get there and complete it. If you need transportation, we'll fund it.
Oh, that's fabulous.
If you need a hard hat to actually complete the training, we'll fund it. That makes a massive difference in terms of who can access that kind of opportunity. But that's the kind of policy component that's sitting at a 30,000 foot level alone, you're not going to consider. And so we do the work on the ground and then try to surface those to policymakers to hopefully drive better policies.
And that's also, again, the underrepresented a population that needs those jobs, and we need them. So you're doing a great service. So I hope Washington is listening and state level. So you stated in past speaking engagements that it's imperative that we have this mind shift from human versus machine to human plus machine. And you'd argue that technology cannot be the only answer and that the future must be a, quote, creative intersection of technology, humanity, and philosophy. Talk to us about that intersection.
Janice, we talk a lot in the headlines about what will technology do and what will it do to us. And I think that just fundamentally forgets the fact that no matter how powerful the technology, it is ultimately a tool. And tools are value neutral. It's the application of them that carries value. And so we have a choice with every one of these tools, how we apply them. And I think that's where philosophy comes in. We can use AI for good. We just choose to spend most of our money to use AI to maximize advertising clicks. Yeah. That's a choice we make. And so
or bad actors out there using AI.
Bad actors, absolutely. And so the philosophy piece is about the choices we make in where we invest and how we use these tools. And the humanity side is about asking the question of ultimately what kind of a world do we want? What do we want the world to look like? And then the tools and the choices should drive us towards that. We've gotten so good at maximizing, squeezing the next percentage of profit. That is no longer an interesting problem. We've done that so many times and we can do it with our eyes closed. So the interesting, complex problem is how do you build organizations that thrive, that transform industries, that do that and provide both profits to investors and quality work to workers? Those no longer need to be either ors. The yes and is possible. It's about rising up to that challenge and actually designing the kind of companies, the kind of societies we want, leveraging the technology and tooling that's underneath.
So what's your advice, though, to these leaders that are listening in their own companies and employees as well, in terms of to have that shift of the mindset?
For me personally, I think of this in three ways. I think of it for me personally in my life. Unless I am actually trying to change my own practices on a regular basis, I am embedding so much inertia in my own life that my mind's not going to be able to imagine what's possible. So it's how do you rethink how you do your life on a regular basis? Mm-hmm. When it comes to leading organizations, I think for me, it's a big part of it is setting an example. And so how do you give the opportunity for your team to leverage these tools that exist, not in a way that you've pre-scripted and fully determined, but in an emergent way that you don't know what's going to emerge from it. And then the third piece is getting really intentional about rethinking workflows and business model that are most critical to how you run your organizations, rethinking and redesigning them from the ground up with some of the technologies that become possible.
So, what do you see as far as leaders and companies embracing the technology, showing their people? Maybe it's at a town hall. Or tell us about that. How should leaders sort of lead by example?
Yeah, maybe a few interesting examples. I've seen an executive who, because it's a multi-jurisdiction company, multi-country company, they've ended up recording a video of themselves and had AI automatically dub it in 10 plus languages and make the dubbed version available. And you could choose which version of him you wanted to listen to. Yeah. And it's that person, it's speaking, it's just dubbed automatically. And it's almost as if it's the person speaking. That's one example. Another is the idea of a flexible benefit to employees to use generative AI tools. And so we've seen that grow quite a bit. Companies that offer that and say, use it to make your work better and more efficient, and we'll reward you for that. And so building incentive models around a bottom-up approach to embedding and adopting these tools. And then the third piece I would say is challenges. We've seen organizations issue public challenges because they know the technical community out there is so deep into the space that they, as an organization internally, will never have the same level of knowledge. So they publish a business challenge with a technical community. There are a number of them, Kaggle and others, where you can say, here's my business challenge to an open network of technical developers. And you say, what can you develop for me? And how can we solve this? And they run public hackathons, public community challenges. And you've seen some really interesting solutions emerge from that otherwise would never come out of the company internally.
Does one come to mind? I mean, that's sort of like crowdsourcing or solution sourcing by putting your problem out there with everybody, but you're opening up a little bit. Are you vulnerable to your competitors?
Yeah, and it's a very good question. And I think the way to think about it is, how opened up are you already and how much of it do you know?
Good.
Right? Yeah. And I think we have a sense of boundaries and restrictions, but there is just so much more increasingly out there when you think about how common code repositories and code bases are, how common and replicable software is. You, of course, have to think about risk factors, but there's so much more you can open to the world out than you have or than you give yourself permission to.
That's remarkable. It really, there's so many great ideas out there. So if a company can tap into those, right, and then adapt it to what they need internally.
And especially going after some of these targeted, because a lot of these technical communities are it's all self-driven. People are there because they care about this type of work. It's not that they're there for a particular payment model. You can still put an incentive model, but they deeply know the space beyond any individual person you could hire.
FutureFit AI has been recognized in some impressive ways since 2019. Selected by the U.S. Department of Innovation as a winning organization, won TD's $1 million Ready Challenge Prize, and was selected by Google AI as a Google finalist. That's really impressive. What are your goals now for the company and the platform going forward? Where will it be, say, in 3 years' time?
Thanks so much, Janice. And the way the world's been changing, hard to tell exactly where it might be in 3 years in time. But the way we think about this, especially with our most recent announcement around the Career Copilot, this AI career assistant that's there with you along the way at every turn of your career. Our view is, when we take the long-term view on this, it's possible to deliver a personalized career copilot to anybody, anywhere, at less than $1 a month. There's a lot of work to do to get there, but we think that now is the technical trajectory it's possible to do that. When you combine the ability to interact in 50 plus languages, when you bring together text and voice interaction for those who might not have digital access, there is just so much more that opens up. And so our big ambition over the next 5 to 10 years is to work with both employers and with governments and society organizations around the world to bring the career copilot and this idea of everybody deserves a career copilot in this world of work. Whether or not that's our product, everyone deserves a quality guide as they navigate a fast-changing world of work. And so our focus is bringing that to people at scale, helping them guide them through their paths, and then help organizations and governments deliver support and guidance at scale at a fraction of the cost that they would have otherwise been able to, because of what the new technology enables. And so we're very excited for that. We've already started working with a number of partners in an early stage, both on frontline workers and job seekers out in the market. And so we look forward to more of that coming to life in the next couple of years.
Yeah, because you can't have enough coaches to really coach all thousands and thousands of people in multiple languages as well, right?
And that's exactly, Janice, the starting point to think about, right? Nobody I have spoken to disagrees with the premise that in this world of work and future of work, everybody deserves a guide. And so if you think about all the way from students in K-12 to mid-career transitioning workers, if we agree that everyone deserves a guide, then you're right. We cannot do that purely through one-on-one executive coaching. That's not going to reach everybody. And so how do you complement the existing human coaching models with a scalable career assistant that understands who you are, adapts to the world of work, connects you to the things you need, and perhaps even does a job application on your behalf?
That'd be fun. I'd probably do a better job too. But I don't, as an executive search recruiter here, I still think the human element will come into play. But when you think about the masses of people that we need in the reskilling, I absolutely think this is a fabulous company that you built. And you sound very mission driven, very purpose driven. You're a for-profit, but you're really trying to change society, aren't you? You're really trying to empower people over their careers and help employers meet the demands.
And Janice, I think that is the new economy, the purpose economy in a lot of ways, right? We traditionally built these false dichotomies that you either had to be for profit or not for profit, right? These structures we created, and they don't actually capture the reality of our world anymore. I'll speak as a business owner to this. There is no chance in this market to hire exceptional technical talent if you don't actually have a brand to them that's beyond about just how much they're getting paid. And so it is necessary for us to have a bigger mission. It just so happened naturally that since day one, that was critical for us as we started the company. But that's necessary. And I also think there is such an intersection of impact and opportunity in today's world. When you think about the global goals, the sustainable development goals laid out by the United Nations, we just had in New York, the Global Goals Week here. Those are the blueprint for all the massive challenges that exist that have both opportunity and impact. So we think there's a massive opportunity, business opportunity, to build a career co-pilot that scales and can help people intelligently through their guides. And it solves problems for employers and it drives a mission on the ground. We'll take it all.
And so in your own company, you've spoken about ethics and, what could go wrong with technologies. There are some bad actors. How do you ensure with your own AI tool that you're operating at the highest level?
I think, Janice, what's important for all of us to acknowledge and recognize is, given how fast this space is changing, there is no single predetermined answer. I think the pieces that we consider as critical, one is around being intentional about the data that you pull into any AI solution you build. And for example, we don't incorporate demographic data into recommendations of career pathways because they have nothing to do with each other. And that's one example. I think another is, and I think this is really critical, tracking the performance over time. And we can understand who we're serving and understand whether there are differential impacts. And then the final piece is actively being part of conversations. We've seen national governments around the world and regional governments like EU and the US government and the White House start to bring principles around AI ethics and AI bias. How do you contribute to that in a way that enables innovation and minimizes risk of harm? And so those are very tough, I think, nuanced questions that we continue to be a part of.
So we're running out of time. I could go on for hours with you. This is fascinating. And I myself will play with AI and, just to be familiar and understand it. But what is your advice to the executives out there, to the employees, to the leaders of companies in terms of what to look forward to for AI in their own worlds, their communities? What's your advice to all leaders and employees?
The name of our company is FutureFit AI. And I think about that word FutureFit a lot. And I think that's the word in this world we want to all think a lot about. As individuals, how do I stay future fit? And that means not sitting back. That means testing out new tools ourselves in our personal life and our work life. That means questioning the assumptions we had around how our work works. As leaders of organizations, for me, it's really about focusing in your most critical workflows, especially if those have been built and embedded over the last 10, 20, 30 years, and rethinking them from the ground up using something like generative AI. What would that look like? That exercise is really critical. And I think the final piece of it is this new economy is an economy that you can only win in if you've got the right talent and skills. There is very little of our economy that's left where you can win without it. And so how do you have a very intentional, equally critical component of your business strategy that's about designing and developing the kind of workforce you need for the future? The piece I'll finish with is the story I started with. My parents made this incredibly audacious choice to give up their entire life so that my brother and I could have a better opportunity at what was next. They didn't know what was next, but they wanted us to give us that. They wanted to give us that chance. What does that look like for all of us? What is that an audacious choice that we're all going to make to give ourselves a radically better chance, to give our companies a radically better chance, and to give our people a radically better chance at success and prosperity?
Hamoon Ekhtiari, you are a leader of leaders in the AI world, and I love this conversation on AI, a career co-pilot for the future of work. This has been a fascinating discussion. We'll have to continue it. Probably AI in the future or a robot might interview you and might even do a better job. But I have totally enjoyed this. And thank you for sharing your incredible story personally and professionally. And I thank you to our audience for tuning in for another game-changing conversation on Leadership Reimagined. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at elliggroup.com. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Hamoon Ekhtiari, CEO of FutureFit AI.
Thanks so much for having me, Jen.